welcome back to part 2 of the Glacier Crossbody sew along. We've just done part 1, and in that part 1 we made all of our pieces. We did our vertical pocket, our side gussets, and our back pocket, and we even did these pockets inside with the credit card slots and the lipstick. So now we're going to put it all together. Alright, so get out your instructions. And this video is starting right at the top of page 10 in this section here, where we put our zipper gussets onto the front and back pockets of the bag. So we're talking about our small zipper gussets now, so you can get those out. And first, let's see, before we get started, I really would like to make sure that you've marked your placement markings on both the front and back pieces. It's easiest to do, just lay it on top and remark, or if you find that your piece is just a little bit smaller than it used to be because of pressing, you can even lay that on front and just check for the markings and mark those. So just like in the diagrams, we are going to attach our gussets, and let's see, got our 2 gussets, and we're going to attach them both differently. So for the front pocket, the one with the vertical zipper, we want our zipper to start on this side. So we'll have our zipper pull on that side as well. That's my outer fabric. This purple is my exterior dark outer color. So we'll put this wrong side up and clip that in place. And then on the back pocket, we are going to put it also wrong side up, but we're going to have our pull when closed on the right side. So we'll match up those markings that we did on our zipper at the very beginning and clip that there. Okay, so now we're ready to pin these in place, and it's easiest to sew and pin with the zipper open. So we'll just open that up, and what we'll do first is we'll just do this in sections. We're just going to make the sewing really easy by sewing this bag in straight lines first. So we'll first clip and sew the top edges only. We're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and we're only going to sew this straight section between here and here. Okay, so put your zipper foot on and sew that. Then we'll do the bottom straight section. So make sure these are wrong side up, and we'll line up our center seam to the center marking, and clip across here as well. And I like to keep my zipper foot on for this because we're going to be using it throughout this process, and just sew this seam from here to here. Once that's done, you can move on to the sides. So we've got our markings from our pattern pieces. They're right here and here, I can see them clearly. And we have our marking from the body pattern piece, and we'll line that up. Now this is really important to do because that way we can make sure we have even amounts here and here, and that we're not going to have a lot of puckering, or we're not going to have things that are too tight. So this one we'll stitch just from where the zipper starts to about right here. Okay, I'm going to go sew these 4 sides, and I'll come back and then I'll show you how we work in the corners. Alright, I've stitched up all my straight edges only. A couple of places I had to go back in and restitch because I veered off, and I want you to be checking for that every time. What tends to happen is, because this is a bit thicker, your foot will kind of slide off and you'll get a seam allowance that's smaller than 1/4 inch. So almost on every one I had to go in and fix, and that is just fine. We'll start easing in our corners. These ones with the gussets are easier than the zippers, so we'll do that first. The first thing you should do is go ahead and try to fit it in, and if it looks like it's going to be a bit tight, we need to do some clipping. So what I recommend is clipping only 1/4 inch in. We don't want to go any deeper than that, and about 1/2 inch apart around all sides. And we only do this for fabric. We don't clip our zippers because that will make them fray. So now it will ease in around the corner really nicely, and it may be easiest to go like this and push it into the corner like that, and clip it around as you go. If you have a little bit too much fabric, you'll need to sort of ease in the fullness. So we'll clip around here, make sure it gets out to those edges, and now we'll be able to sew around that with the 1/4 inch seam allowance. A little further along in the video, when I'm sewing on the large gusset, I do actually sew this on camera. So what I do is I show you how I set up my machine, I show you how I set up my 1/4 inch foot, and so if you want to just jump ahead in the video or just watch the video through, you'll be able to see how I sew around these corners. My fingers kind of get in the way, but you get the idea. And then also easing in these zippers. Now for the zippers you probably won't have to clip, because I've tried to make sure there was a little bit of extra length here between the marking and the center to make sure that these are a little bit longer, because really clipping a zipper can be quite dangerous. You lose the integrity of those stitches, and because they're made out of fabrics that fray quite easily, the weave will just come apart on you. So push this into the corner and clip along here and get it right out. And as you're sewing, you may need to adjust this because it slides out of the way. What I think that you should do is actually go along here and stitch with a 1/8 inch seam allowance first. And then when you have done that, go back in and restitch with the 1/4. And as you sew, you'll be pushing these gathers out of the way. Okay, so you'll just be pushing this down, and then when I get to here, I push this down, and then when I get here, this down, and you just go around your corner just like that. All right, so this one is already stitched. I've gone around my corners. I have a look, always check each one, make sure it's nice and straight and even, and you could even do up your zipper and see how it looks. See if it's all straight and if it doesn't look wobbly, and that looks pretty good. And then here are my corners that I clipped and stitched around. Check for any puckers or gathers, and if you need to do any fixing, now's the time. You're not going to get a chance to do any fixing here later. Okay, so open that back up. That's really important at this stage, and just pull it down to the middle. We'll get one of our lining pieces, not the piece with the credit card pocket, and we're going to put this right over top, and we're going to sew all these right into the middle and trap them in. This is our seam binding. So now we don't have to do any bias binding at all on this bag or in this section, because this is going to be our seam binding. So sew this exactly like you stitched up your gusset onto here. Do the straight sides first and then the corners. But at the bottom here, we need to leave a gap for turning. So I'll show you that. Get all these center areas clipped. So we'll leave an area for turning about 4 inches wide. So from here to here. But in that 4 inches, we're actually going to sew it close with a longer stitch length. So around here, I want you to use your regular stitch length. But in here, let's just do a basting stitch. A little bit longer. I have 4.5 on my sewing machine. You might be able to go longer. And then do your stop start reversing right here and here, but not in here, because we need to be able to rip these out after. So, okay, I'm just gonna go stitch around these outside corners, or this outside seam allowance, what you're trying to do is stay just within this seam allowance or on it and not veer out, because this is just to encase enclose our seam allowances. So stitch along here, and if you're a little bit smaller than 1/4, that's okay. And after that, I'll show you how to turn this out. Okay, we've done all of our stitching around the outsides, and I found it easiest to actually use my awl and help push this through, because it tends to gather up a bit when you're going around the corners. So I just use this to guide my way through. And now at the bottom section here, where we've done the long basting stitches, I'm just going to press that open so that we have a nice straight edge after we turn it there. Okay, so I've got this really cute little iron. It's a steam iron, so if you lift the button there, you get steam, and it's so fantastic for working with bags and pressing out tight little spots inside and outside. So I've got my bag turned, and this is the opening that we just pressed under. And before I stitch that closed, I want to press all of these seam allowances flat around here. Okay, so take your iron, or a mini iron if you have one, and spend a bit of time pressing all of this flat. And you can see right in here, this is the area I'm pressing flat, all the seam allowances and away from the zipper. Okay, and then on the outside, you can give it nice flattened look. This will help press the seam allowances back as well. We won't get a chance to do this later, so you might as well press around here now. Now, a few of my bag pattern testers felt like they wanted to do some top stitching around here. And what that does is it anchors this seam allowance down. If you feel like you want to do that, go right ahead. I don't feel like I need to. When I zip this up, the zipper doesn't interfere with the fabric at all, because the fabric is pulled tight. And when we sew this down at the end, it's even gonna pull it even tighter. So I kind of like the look, the clean look without stitches, but actually if you want to do top stitching around here right now, that might be a nice feature. What we are gonna do is close up this gap. So I'll fold this out and take this little edge that I had pressed over and line it up on the stitching line and put a few pins in here just to hold it down, and then get out my needle and thread and do a quick little invisible or ladder stitch across here. You can even hide your knot underneath when you start and just stitch that close. You actually won't get a chance to do this later either, so this needs to be done soon. I did have a pattern tester stitch this in the ditch right here. You could do that, as long as you make sure you pull this a little bit past, so that when you are stitching in the ditch right here, you catch it. Okay? And then we're ready to move on after that to attach our other lining piece. We are going to attach this front pocket piece to a pocket lining, so that when you open it up, you see the right side of a pocket in there. So this is the one that we're using our credit card slot pocket on. So what we'll do is match up seams once again, center, center, and well, you know the routine. It's just the same thing sort of all over again. Center, center, center. But this time we're not going to use a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. This time we're just basting. So what we need to do is use our 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. My mark on my zippers come off, so I'm just going to close that so I can sort of see where the center here is here, and we'll go with that instead. Okay, and open it back up because it's impossible to sew like that. So yeah, so this is just a 1/8 of an inch basting stitch. Typically when you're basting you do use a long stitch length, but that can be difficult when you're going around curves. So if you want to shorten it up on the curves, you can do that. And I like to just tuck this guy in here so it's out of the way. And just like previous, we'll do the straight sides first, and then the zippers into the corners should ease right in. The bottom corners though will be a little bit harder. I almost guarantee you will have to clip those to get them to lay into there, and otherwise they'll just be too tight, because what you're doing is a little bit different. You're not folding it this way, you're folding it outward, so you will have to do some clipping around there. Okay, so this one I've done. I've stitched my lining on. You can see when I open up my pocket, it's all in there. Don't have to press it even because it's laying flat like this. So you can see my basting stitches along here, and along here I had to do a lot of clipping to get it to fit. This one was still a bit tight and didn't make it all the way out to the edge. That's all right. And that's how they look. So now that's my back piece, and we're moving right along to the border. And we're going to be working on page 12, and on page 12 I show you first how to clip these little notches on the inside corners. This is actually pretty important, so just clip these at 1/8 of an inch just inside the curves. You don't need to do the outside, just the inside areas, and this will help stretch it around the bag opening. Now in the instructions I show you how, or I tell you to start at the centers, top, bottom, left and right, but I've been making a few of these now, and I think I might actually have an easier way to do this. I do take the border piece and turn it so that it's wrong side up, and attach these right side together, matching the center marks. Okay, and first I like to start at the zipper, because it's harder to get a zipper to ease around the corners or to the fabric to fit. So that's the area we want to start with first this time, so that we don't have to do any clipping on our zipper, or so that our zipper is not too bulky at all. So I'll start by pinning along here, along the top edge, and then we're going to just find center bottom. This will be the seam line in the gusset and the center mark. You can clip that together just so it doesn't slide around too much. And then we'll first work in these curves. So we'll be stretching this fabric out as we go and clipping along here. And continue stretching this along the zipper edge and clip it into place until you just get around the curve. And do that on both sides. Clip along here, and those clip marks will open up as you go. And then so now we will sew from here to here. And then after that's done, you can go ahead and do the bottom straight sides and then the bottom corners. It just fits a whole lot better that way, rather than doing the straight sides here, here, and here, because we've ensured that this area is stretched around this corner and will lay really flat. Okay, so then after that we're going to now attach this to the foam, and first we'll have to do some pressing. So we're going to press the seam allowances outward along here. So I just put this here, and I do my I place my iron along here and press and steam really well along here to get out any little puckers. If you feel inclined, you could top stitch or stitch in the ditch along this outside border. What this will do is it will anchor your border piece to your seam allowances. Didn't really feel like I needed to on mine, but if you want to, go right ahead. So then we're going to use our 14 by 14 lining piece, and it's really important that your lining is wrong side up, okay? And then we'll place our foam on top of there, and then our finished piece. So this is a bit excessive. You probably could go with 13 by 13, but I wanted to be safe. But if you want to save, you know, an inch or so, you can definitely shorten that up a bit. The most important thing when you're pinning this down is to make sure you've got it completely stretched out, and not to stretch it out of shape, but just to make sure the top and the bottom and the corners and the sides are stretched down and into place. And then we'll go around and we'll pin this down just exactly like you did when you attached the side gussets to the foam. And then you can go forward and go ahead and do your basting stitches, trim your foam, and do your zigzag stitches in here to compress. And that's pretty important because we're going to have a lot of bulk. We're going to be attaching them next to the gusset piece, and the gusset piece and the foam together will be kind of thick, so we want to make sure we do that. So as I mentioned before, I'm going to be doing a little bit of sewing at the machine, and I'm going to just show you how to ease in these gussets around the corners. The bag may look a little different. It won't show this pocket that I'm going to show you because it's from my Glacier Base Bags pattern, which is the same exact outer shape. And then after we sew the gussets, we'll jump into the binding, and then we'll be almost done. The only thing to do after that is the strap. So let's go and attach these to our foam, and then we'll be ready to put our gussets on. We're at the sewing machine, and I just want to show you how I set up my sewing machine and my presser feet. I've just got on my regular straight stitch foot here, and normally we wouldn't need a zipper foot because we're not close to the zipper. But what happens when I'm sewing on layers like this is I get tipping. If it's not too many layers, it's not bad, but what can happen is because we've got these really compressed edges over here, and over here we have a bump, your foot will sew at an angle and it'll keep just sliding off. And when it slides off, your seam allowance gets smaller and smaller. So in order to combat that problem, I just go to my zipper foot, and a lot of people are afraid of zipper feet, but really they're pretty handy. You just have to make sure you don't sew on your fingers and get your fingers in there. My fast zipper foot is kind of strange looking, but it has a walking foot mechanism at the back, the IDT, which helps pull the fabric back. So even though I'm using a zipper foot, I'm still getting even feed with this fast sewing machine. So it works great. You might have something similar on yours. Now you'll probably notice all these black marks on my foot, and that is because I want to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but I can't do that if I can't see where it is. And unfortunately, there's not a good mark on here that'll tell me where that is if I want my needle right at the edge. So I've gone and used my ruler and put one of my clear rulers underneath and set my needle where I want it, so it's right on the 1/4 inch line. There's stitch guides for this too, but I have them, but I just end up using my ruler anyway. And then I went and took my Sharpie and I just made a mark on my foot, and I've done this on other feet too, clear feet. I think it works great. You have to put it on every once in a while. It does wear off. And so I was able to figure out where that 1/4 inch seam allowance is. The other thing I've done is I've put down some tape. This tape is meant to be used on these gridded rulers, so you can take it on and off and mark out squares. So it is not very sticky at all. In fact, it's probably going to start peeling off partway through, and I might need to add it again. I don't even know if they still sell this. I've got this 100 years ago. So anyways, I'm all set up. I've got my 1/4 inch foot. If you don't want to use this method, if you'd like to try your foot or you have a better system happening, go right ahead. I find this works for me though. And we'll just start right here, right before the curve. So I'll make sure that these edges are even. And when I start sewing, if I find that it is veering off and the foot is sliding off, that's okay. Just let it happen and sew a smaller seam allowance. We'll go back and check it and fix it after. So let's just start sewing along here. When you get to the clips, pull them out, but then realign each time. And I find that if I put my finger down or something down to help me, that works best. If you've got Bianni's stiletto, by all means use it. So basically we don't want to zoom through here. I mean, we've put a lot of effort into this bag. Just flying through this section is not going to give us a great result. So I've got the zipper open, you notice, because it's really difficult to sew with it closed. And what I'll do now is just show you what it looks like on the inside. I always check my seam when I'm doing bags like this. I can always take puckers out now. Why wait until the bag is done, right? Don't usually have puckers on the straight seams, but I always have a look and make sure I'm happy with it. And then I move on to the next section. So breaking it down into sections really helps. We'll go right to the bottom edge now. Okay. And I also always check my seam width after. So I know this one's working. It's going 1/4 inch wide, but on the curves you tend to veer out a little ways, and then you almost always have to redo small little bits. I'll try to use this screwdriver so that I don't get my fat fingers in the view of the camera. All right, so I'm going to stop there. By the way, this is my favoriteest thing in the world right now, my thread cutters. I have it attached right to my thread spool holder, and I never walk away with my zipper or my snippers anymore. It was one of my biggest angers and frustrations, was where are my snippers? So I'll move to this side of the bag now. Again, let's get that zipper open so it's easy to work with. And then clip the straight sections, because we'll do the straight sections because we don't need to ease them in. We know that they fit. We know that that's going to be an easy sew. Okay, now we're ready to start easing in our corners. Okay, let's start with the easiest ones first, which aren't the sides or the corners with the zippers. We will start clipping this around and see how it fits. If it's a bit too long, you have to ease in fullness. If it's a bit too short, you need to clip little notches so that it lies flat and spreads apart enough to fit that section. And this one was kind of just perfect, so I'm not going to be able to show you how to do either one of those. Let's get this corner stitched. So now a good idea is to sort of just play with this a little bit to make little pleats and gathers so that it lays flat. You don't want it up like this when you're sewing. You can't work with that. So what I like to do is kind of to just do little finger gathers here. And then I put my hand on here and it lays nice and flat. When we get to these section, if there's bumps, we're going to work with those in when we get to them. Okay, so we start sewing, watching our seam allowance. Hold this down nice with your hand. Get out your stiletto or your favorite little tool, and we're just doing small sections of sewing at a time. Do not zoom around this corner, and don't expect to have it go perfectly perfect. We just need to ease in those little gathers so that we don't have puckers. So when you get to a bump, you can, after we are passing a bump, you kind of lift it up and press it to the back, and then it kind of goes away because it then goes behind the foot. And that'll take a little bit for me to explain, but basically I've gotten to a bit of a pleat here, so now I open it up and pull it to the back. And you just keep doing that all the way around. I've got a nice big pleat right here, so lift it up and pull it back and smooth out the fabric just in front. See that I've got a little bit of a pleat happening there, or a little bit of a gather. Just ease it in, smooth it out with your fingers, flatten that out, and stitch to your starting point. You can go a little bit further just to reverse stitch and anchor it down. Okay, now always have a look. Let's see what we need to do. Spread it apart and see if there's any puckers. Oh, there's a little one there, but it's not too horrible. I'm okay with that. It's not that noticeable. Now let's also have a look at our stitching. Did we stay at 1/4 of an inch? Do we need to stitch again? Nope, that looks really good. All right, I'm going to do the other corner that way, but I will show you a zipper corner because they're a little bit more difficult for sure. Okay, that one looks like it fits really well, and this one looks like it could do some clipping. So if you find that it's a bit tight and it just won't fit that area, just do a few tiny little clips just within the seam allowance, so only about a 1/8 of an inch long, 1/2 an inch apart, and that will just lay right down and lay flat perfectly for you. Okay, so the zipper makes these bubbles and these big bumps, and it's a little bit harder to get around these corners laying flat, so it takes a little bit more patience and fitting. Okay, so start. That's my thread. Doing something wonky. There we go. Always adjusting your fabric to fit so that your raw edges stay together, and I'm turning it with my left hand as I go. Alright, so I've gotten to a spot here where there's a bump right here, and I've got nowhere to go. So then I lift up this zipper back here and I flatten that out. Turn a little bit more, and then I can take that clip out. I'll stitch to my next spot where I might have some trouble, lift that up and flatten that out. Now if you can see, there's a little bit of a, oh, the ripple went away when I took the clip out. There's a bit of a ripple there, so I'll lift that up and flatten that out. And that's that. Okay. So check for puckers. Looks good. And now check to see if we need to do any deeper seam allowances, and that looks like a 1/4 of an inch to me, so it's perfect. So we'll go and do the other two corners. I've stitched on my large side gusset on the front part of my bag, and you may notice it looks a little bit different than in the video because that was a different bag. And now I'm ready to put on my back of the bag. So the first thing we must do is make sure that zipper is open. Otherwise we won't be able to turn our bag right side out. So we'll put this right side up and just start clipping around here all over again. Now this is your second time around, so you'll probably go a lot faster, and you may even do it in larger sections. You could do the top part first, that works really well, and then the bottom and sides. You don't, since you've done a million of these corners by now, you probably just want to go around it. After we've done that, I'm going to show you how to turn this fold over elastic into seam binding. In the pattern instructions, there's actually a link to a tutorial by Annie Unrein from byannies.com. So you can type that into your browser if you would rather do quilt bias binding, a seam binding method using 2 1/4" strips. But if you want to give the fold over elastic a try, get that ready to go and we'll get started. Alright, we're back from sewing on our gusset piece. We still have our lining here on the outside and it's still wrong side out. Okay, so we're ready to attach our by Annie's fold over elastic, which is 3/4 inch wide. Okay, so we're going to join it right at the bottom center, and that's where we're going to start so that it's less noticeable. When you cut the fold over elastic, it actually frays just a little bit. So I'm just going to melt the ends with this lighter, and you actually don't even need to touch the edge of it. You just go like so and the edge of it melts and it won't fray. Okay, so we're going to use our zipper foot again, and it's set at the 1/4 inch seam allowance once again, but I'm just going to move the needle over just like 1 or 2 little ticks if you have that feature. We're going to start sewing 3/4 inch down so that we have a free end that will fold over the other end of the elastic when it comes around, because we don't really want to get close to our project with a lighter. So I am going to start by butting up that edge right next to, let's see, we'll get that through here, right next to the 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you can see my stitching line from previous. I'm going to get that fold over elastic right up next to it. And this will be easiest if you use a tool like a screwdriver or an awl. I've got the zipper foot set up so it can sew right along that edge, and we're going to try really hard just to keep this up against our sewing line so that we don't go over. If we do go over, that's okay, but what you really don't want to do is slide off and fall off of the seam allowance. We want to keep this up next to it. So the biggest thing is don't go super fast. Go slow, and you don't need to stretch this elastic as you go. Really just keep it a little bit taut, a little bit tight and not stretched out, but not just sitting there floppy either. So you can just poke this over with your awl, get it up to the edge, and step by step we'll slowly get to the corner. It's also really hard not to get my head in here. So another thing I'm doing now when I'm getting close to the corner is I'm just going to start to just pull it a little bit. So one thing I want you to know is when you put this binding on and turn your bag right side out, the binding is actually going to be deep into the corners. So I don't want you to stress too much about how perfect this does or doesn't look. It's going to be deep into the corners and you're not going to see it. The area around the top of the bag where the zipper is, that's going to be more visible. So we do want to kind of have it looking really good and perfected our skills by the time we get to that part. But for right here, I've got a little bit of a pucker there, so I'm just going to bring it over a bit. For right here, it's, it doesn't have to look complete. don't know what I did there. I stabbed something. Okay, well, maybe that was something telling me that it does have to look perfect. Try your hardest, make this look perfect. Just kidding. So stretch it a little bit around the corner, and that's what is similar to bias tape binding. Bias tape binding, since it's cut on a bias, has a bit of stretch. So using the fold over elastic also gives you a nice stretch so that you can get around these corners and make a really nice edge. You'll get faster at this as you go, and there we go. Now we're on the straight, so just pull this out of the way, get this up here. Once you get on the straight, you can sort of go a little bit faster. And again, you don't need to stretch it through here, just enough so that you don't have gathers. We just want to make sure we don't have gathers, and we do want to make sure we keep it up here. So I'm just going to readjust. Looks good. All right, I will go all the way around here and meet you at the end, and I'll show you how to finish off. When we get down to the end, I've got this bit with the melted edge on the top, so I just need to overlap that a bit and make sure I cut the bottom piece. Actually, it's really hard to get my hand in here. Get my bottom piece cut so that it'll slide just underneath it. And okay, I think I'm just going to do one piece first and then go back over with the top rather than try to sew through two. Okay, so then I'll just back up a bit. Actually, put it back underneath. Overlap that. Get it right where I want it. Okay. Do a little reverse stitch there. Just check it. Make sure it's going through nicely. Perfect. And then we'll just do a little reverse stitch again. And trim all those threads. We're going to have to go back through this bag after and trim all these stray threads anyway. Okay, so now we're ready to flip it over and flip it all over to the back, and because it is an elastic, it has it folds over beautifully. Okay, so when we're sewing this side now, we need to make sure that we fold it up to the edge at least, if not a little bit more. Okay, and I find it easiest to go around. You don't have to go all the way around with clips, but clip as you go so that it's pushed over and held in place before you get where you need to sew. Okay, so I'm just going to start right here. So I'll have to fold this part of the bag back to make it nice and flat, and get underneath the foot. Where's my handy little thing? There we go. So there's the stitching line from previous. This is where I not only did I stitch my seam, but looks like I got my stitched my elastic down right on the same seam line. Pulled it over just past that, put my foot down, and I think if you remember correctly, I'd moved my needle a little bit to the right. I'm just going to go one more to the right, just so that I make sure that I don't veer into the bag area and stay just inside the stitching line. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so this is how you do it. All right, so when you get to your clips, remove them and then go ahead and put it down in another spot, and then make sure you can check quite often that this is lined up, and just start moving along here like this. This part's actually faster. So get to your clip. I think I'm just gonna move that one down just because I don't want such a huge gap. And if you get to a spot where it puckers a little bit, you can just lift your foot and readjust. And I'll show you what, we'll get to a corner and I'll show you what that looks like, and then you'll be off and running. I want to show you how good it looks too. So let me just get a little bit done. It's really, I mean, I think that we've all had nightmares with bias binding before. And Annie's method from By Annie with the quilt folded like a quilt binding is actually really easy as well. And so is this. So, okay, so I have a spot here where there's a little bit extra. So I'm just going to make sure my needle is down. I'm going to lift up, and I'm going to just push that into the space a little bit. I think, use my finger, and yeah, so just readjust as you go. Oh, there's one of Jane's clips. And look at how nicely that elastic folds over that rounded edge. Just want to check where my stitching line is. Yeah, it folds over just beautiful. I can just turn it with my hand. Put another clip back here. Just don't want to get too far over. So I'm just going to have a peek. If you get too far over, you might start stitching into your bag body. And okay, well, I'm just gonna take this off so I can show you how awesome it looks. Look how nice that is on both sides. So we're back from seam binding, and we've got our bag turned right side out. I'm really happy with the colors and the fabrics on this bag. It looks so cool. And our zippers, our Emmaline zippers with the little skulls, just work so perfectly with that skull fabric. Okay, so we've got to do some finishing because our bag will tend to not sit straight and this top part pops up a bit, so we just need to do a little bit of pressing. And really, this is not an easy bag to press, so really the best thing to do is to take these seams like so and flatten them out. Or really not flatten them out, fold them completely where you want the fold to be, or where you want it to sit flat, and use a bit of steam and go around and fix up these spots. And let's see, we've got another thing you can do is really come around with something and push and press out all these corners, round them out nicely with your fingers. Press this one, and you can do that right around the bottom too. So you can go like so. Steam works really good. If you have something like a tailor's ham, you can put it right inside the bag and press it right up against the seam here. You can steam right into it. Then you can go around to different spots from the bag. I don't know if you can see that, but if you've got any basting stitches that are showing, you can pull those out as well. And after you're done that, we really just need to attach our strap. So, oh, now you caught me, I didn't do my binding. Pretend that's done. The end of the strap that's got the tab that's folded over with the ends, keep that right side up so that we don't lose it. And then go down the strap, get the end of it, and go up from the back of the ring. Not down from the front, but up from the back of the ring and back over again. Make sure not to twist it as you go, and then we'll put this through the slider ends, through the rings. So what this does is it traps that bit inside there. Okay, so check it, make sure it's straight before you go on. And what did I do? Oh, no, it's okay. And then do the same thing, bring it out so it's not twisted. And this one will go in from the front, fold it to the back, and this is where we're going to attach. Okay, our bag is complete. This is the Glacier Crossbody Bag with a front vertical pocket, a back vertical pocket. Inside the front vertical pocket is our lipstick slots and, or sorry, credit card slots and lipstick pocket, and then our big main compartment, which you could add pockets to, adapt, do anything you want. You can leave the back off, you can leave the front off, and just have it like this. This could be the front of your bag. Or if you want to try something a little bit different, in my other pattern, the Glacier Base Bags, which is part of this pattern bundle, we have the mini and the large Glacier Base Bag, which is made from the center section. Those are in the same pattern bundle, but a different video. So thanks for joining me, and I can't wait to see your bags.